All right, class. Today we're going to continue reading our book, Dinosaurs Before Dark, that we started on Monday. Remember, we met Jack and Annie, and they are traveling in their magic treehouse, and they're exploring this new place that they landed in, and they're learning about it. Today we're going to talk about something called comparing and contrasting. It's kind of like thinking about similarities and differences, what makes them alike or what makes them different. So as we're reading today, I want you to pay attention to Jack and Annie and some things they say or how they respond in different situations and how that makes them different from each other or more like each other. Like sometimes your siblings and you might say something that you agree on and you might act alike, and then sometimes you might be very different. So I want you to think about that as we read today, and we're going to analyze Jack and Annie and their characters, and we're going to think about some of these things that make them similar or different. So pay attention as I read. I'll tell you when is a good place to start thinking about it. So this is chapter 5. It's called Gold in the Grass. Okay. Go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack. He pushed Annie toward the rope ladder. Bye, Henry, she said. Go, said Jack. He gave Annie a big push. Quit it, she said, but she started up the ladder. Jack scrambled after her. They tumbled into the treehouse. They were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur. He was standing on a hilltop, eating flowers off a tree. Oh, man, whispered Jack. We are in a time long ago. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros, only he had 3 horns instead of 1. 2 long ones above his eyes and 1 on his nose. He had a big shield-like thing behind his head. Can anyone think of what kind of dinosaur Jack could be talking about here? Let's think. What does he look like? He has 3 horns and a big shield like something behind his head. Does anyone want to take a guess? All right, let's see what he says. Triceratops, said Jack. Does he eat people? Whispered Annie. I'll look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. There, he said. He pointed to a picture of a Triceratops. He read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. That's a lot. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plants, no meat. Let's go see him, said Annie. Are you nuts? Said Jack. Don't you want to take notes about him? Asked Annie. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Triceratops. Jack sighed. She was right. Let's go, he said. He shoved the dinosaur book into his pack. He slung it over his shoulder and started down the ladder. On the way down, Jack stopped. He called up to Annie. Just promise you won't pet him. I promise. Promise you won't kiss him. I promise. Promise you won't talk to him. I promise. Promise you won't. Go, she said. Jack went. Annie followed. When they stepped off the ladder, the Pteranodon gave them a kind look. Annie blew a kiss to him. Be back soon, Henry, she said cheerfully. Shush, said Jack, and he led the way through the ferns, slowly and carefully. When he reached the bottom of the hill, he kneeled behind a fat bush. Annie knelt beside him and started to speak. Shush, Jack put his fingers to his lips. Annie made a face. Okay, so think about here. When they're going to see this dinosaur, think about the different ways that Jack wanted to approach it and the different ways Annie did, and think about which ways they agreed and when they didn't agree, and how they were similar, how they were alike. And keep these thoughts in your head so that we can use them later. Okay, so they're going to go see it. Jack peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was incredibly big, bigger than a truck. He was eating the flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his pack. He wrote, Eats flowers. Annie nudged him. He ignored her. He studied the Triceratops again. He wrote, Eat slowly. Annie nudged him hard. He looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her fingers through the air and then pointed to the dinosaur, and she smiled. Was she teasing? She waved at Jack. Jack started to grab her. She laughed and jumped away. She fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. Get back, whispered Jack. Too late. The big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of his mouth. Oops, said Annie. Get back, Jack shouted at her. He looks nice, Jack. Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie. No, he's nice, Jack. Nice. But the Triceratops just gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and lopped away down the side of the hill. Bye, said Annie. She turned back to Jack. See? Jack grunted, but he wrote in his notebook, nice. Come on, let's look around some more, said Annie. As Jack stared after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. He reached out and picked it up. A medallion. A gold medallion. You can see the picture here. Here's the dinosaur going down the hill. And here's Jack and Annie. You can see Jack has picked up this gold medallion. Let's see what it's all about. A letter was engraved on the medallion. A fancy M. Oh man, someone came here before us, Jack said softly. Okay, we're going to keep reading to chapter 6. I hope you thought about some things that make Jack and Annie alike and similar. I know I was thinking that it seems that Annie is very outgoing and she just kind of wants to check out the dinosaur. And Jack is a little bit more skeptical. That means he's really kind of thinking about it and he's not so sure it's a good idea. But Annie is very brave and she wants to go right for it. So that's something I noticed was different about them. She's really ready to go and Jack is really thinking about it a little bit more seriously. So let's see chapter 6 and keep thinking about the same thing. This is called Dinosaur Valley. Annie, look at this, Jack called. Look what I found. Annie had gone up to the hilltop. She was busy picking a flower from the magnolia tree. Annie, look, a medallion. But Annie wasn't paying attention to Jack. She was staring at something on the other side of the hill. Oh, wow, she said. Annie. Clutching her magnolia flower, she took off down the hill. Annie, come back, Jack shouted. But Annie had disappeared. I'm going to kill her, Jack muttered. He stuffed the gold medallion into his jeans pocket. Then he heard Annie shriek. Annie! Jack heard another sound as well, a deep, bellowing sound, like a tuba. Jack, come here, Annie called. Annie! Jack grabbed his backpack and raced up the hill. When he got to the top, he gasped. The valley below was filled with nests, big nests made out of mud, and the nests were filled with tiny dinosaurs. Here you can see, there's the nest with all the little dinosaurs in them, and here's Jack up here. He doesn't know what to do yet. Let's see what they do. Annie was crouching next to one of the nests, and standing over her was a gigantic duck-billed dinosaur. Don't panic. Don't move, said Jack. He stepped slowly down the hill toward Annie. The huge dinosaur was towering above Annie, waving her arms, making her tuba sound. Jack stopped. He didn't want to get too close. He knelt on the ground. Okay, move toward me. Slowly, he said. Annie started to stand. Don't stand. Crawl, Jack said. Clutching her flower, Annie crawled toward Jack. The duck-billed dinosaur followed her, still bellowing. Annie froze. Keep going, Jack said softly. Annie started crawling again. Jack inched further down the hill until he was just an arm's distance from Annie. He reached out and grabbed her hand. He pulled Annie toward him. Stay down, he said. He crouched next to her. Bow your head. Pretend to chew. Chew? Yes, I read that's what you do if a mean dog comes at you. She's no dog, Jack, said Annie. Just chew, said Jack. Jack and Annie both bowed their heads and pretended to chew. Soon the dinosaur grew quiet. Jack raised his head. I don't think she's mad anymore, he said. Thanks, Jack, for saving me, said Annie. You have to use your brain, said Jack. You can't just go running to a nest of babies. There's always a mother nearby. Annie stood up. Annie! Too late. Annie held out her magnolia flower to the dinosaur. I'm sorry I made you worry about your babies, said Annie. The dinosaur moved closer to Annie. She grabbed the flower from her. She reached for another. No more, said Annie. The dinosaur let out a sad tuba sound. But there are more flowers up there, Annie said. She pointed to the top of the hill. I'll get you some. Annie hurried up the hill. Okay, let's think. If this were Jack, would he be feeding the dinosaur? She's feeding it her magnolia flowers, and then she's going to go get it more. Do you think that Jack would do the same thing, or maybe something different? Let's think about that as we keep reading. The dinosaur waddled after her. Jack quickly examined the babies. Some were crawling out of their nest. Where were the other mothers? Jack took out the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. He found a picture of some duck-billed dinosaurs and read the caption. The Aniosaurus lived in colonies. While a few more mothers babysat the nests, others went to hunt for food. So there must be more mothers close by. Hey, Jack, Annie called. Jack looked up. Annie was at the top of the hill feeding magnolia flowers to the giant Aniosaurus. She's nice too, Jack, Annie said. But suddenly, the dinosaur made her terrible tuba sound. Annie crouched down and started to chew. The dinosaur barged down the hill. She seemed afraid of something. Jack put the book down on top of his pack and hurried to Annie. Here's the dinosaur you can see there, and Annie crouching down here, and Jack's coming to see what's going on. What do you think's going to be there scaring away the dinosaur? What would it be afraid of? There's some good guesses. Let's see. I wonder why she ran away, said Annie. We were starting to be friends. Jack looked around. What he saw in the distance almost made him throw up. An enormous, ugly monster was coming across the plain. He was walking on 2 big legs and swinging a long, thick tail and dangling 2 tiny arms. He had a huge head and his jaws were wide open. Even from far away, Jack could see his long, gleaming teeth. Tyrannosaurus Rex, whispered Jack. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're going to stop there for today. And that sounds like it's going to get a little crazy that now there's a T-Rex. And you guys have seen T-Rex in pictures and stuff, and they're really big and really scary. So we'll see what happens when we go to read some more tomorrow. So right now we're going to keep talking about this idea. Remember, I was talking about comparing and contrasting. So that just means if something is alike or different. So I have some pictures here we're going to look at, and we're going to do an example. So here I have an apple and a banana. So I'm going to show you how I would compare them. So compare means that you're looking for similarities between something. You're seeing how they're alike. So I would say that an apple and a banana are both fruits. And that is something how I'm comparing them. They're both fruits. And I would say that they're both sweet. When you eat them, they're very sweet. An apple is sweet and a banana is sweet. I would also say an apple can be green, and sometimes bananas can be green when they're not quite ripe. And apples can also be yellow, and this banana is yellow. I know this apple isn't yellow, but some apples can be yellow, so that's a similarity between an apple and a banana. So let's contrast them now. And that means we're going to find some differences between them. So I'm going to show you what I would say. Well, this apple is red and this banana is yellow. So that's something different about these two in the picture. And the apple has a leaf and the banana doesn't. So that makes them different too. And the apple is round and the banana is more long. So that's a difference between them. So that's how I would contrast them. Okay, does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? All right, so we're going to remember that compare means they're alike and contrast means how they're different. So compare and contrast, alike and different. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to think about a few things that make you who you are, that make you special. Think about maybe something you like to do or something you have at home, maybe your favorite toy, or think about how you look or your hair color or something like that. So I want you to pick 3 things that make you special and keep them in your head. So 3 things that make you special. I would say, as an example, 3 things that make me special. I have blue eyes. I like to dance. And I I have this penguin stuffed animal that I really like. So those would be my 3 things. So now you think of your 3 things and get them in your head. I'll give you a minute to think about them. Okay. So when you have your 3 things, I want you to turn and talk to a neighbor, and I want you to tell them your 3 things. Okay. So go ahead and take your 3 things that make you special and turn and talk to a neighbor about it and share those 3 things with your neighbor, and they're going to share with you. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so now that you've got a chance to turn and talk with your neighbor, I want to hear from a couple groups about some things that made you alike or different. So think about the 3 things that you said and what your partner said. Were they very different? Was there anything alike? So let's see. Let's hear from your group over here. Okay, so something alike could be that you both play soccer. That makes you alike. That would be comparing you two. You both play soccer. And something different would be that Jill has blonde hair and Jack has red hair. Very good. So that would be contrasting you two. Very good. So I think you guys are getting the hang of it. So now that we've talked about it together and I told you what they mean, we're going to go and fill out a chart about Jack and Annie and how they're alike and how they are similar. So now that you've done it yourselves, or now that we've done it together, I want you to go ahead and try that on your own, all by yourselves, with Jack and Annie. And once you're done, you can check with your partner next to you and see what you came up with. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. So we have a special chart here that's going to help us compare and contrast. This is called a Venn diagram. Can you say that? Venn diagram. Okay, good. And on your Venn diagram, you have 2 circles, and they crisscross here in the middle. So what you do is you would write Jack's name on one side, okay, in one bubble. So Jack is this bubble. Then on the other side, you would write Annie. So this is what you're going to do with the paper at your seat. So we have Jack and we have Annie. And we're going to think of some things that are special just about Jack. What makes him really unique? And you're going to go ahead and list them in this side of the bubble just about Jack. So think about some of those things we talked about earlier, that Jack is really careful and he really likes to read and he likes to know all the facts. So those types of things. And then you're going to do the same thing for Annie. What makes Annie special? She's a little bit more outgoing and maybe a little bit more brave. So think about those things for Annie and what makes her really, really special. And then in the middle, this is the part where you're going to compare them. So these are things that both Jack and Annie do. So this would be Jack and Annie together. What do they both do? What makes them alike? These would be what makes them different. So this is your contrast. And your compare goes right here in the center. So these would be more things like they both like to go on adventures. They like to go on adventures together. So maybe I would put that in the middle. So I want you to keep thinking about that and think about what we read today and what we've read so far. So anything from chapters 1 to chapter 6 is okay. And think about what makes them alike and what makes them different. And you're going to fill in a few things in this chart. I would like you to have maybe 3 things in each section. And then you can go ahead and turn and talk with a partner. And you can see what they have to say. And you can even compare with your partner and see what their charts look like. All right. Is there any questions? All right, go ahead and go to your seats and let's continue working on analyzing the characters.